Welcome back to Logic Bender. In today's video, we're going to take a closer look at Gary of Paramount Tactical and the timeline of his opinions about the Charlie Kirk case. If you're at all interested in the Charlie Kirk case, you probably already know who Gary is, but in case you don't, here he is introducing himself.
You are now entering a dangerous liberty zone where God-given natural rights are held sacred and exercised. This is your warning. Tyranny, fascism, and censorship will not be tolerated. Ideas will be exchanged freely. Rigorous debate and open discourse is encouraged. If you are weak and your beliefs are fragile, you should leave now. Prepare yourself. We are now live on the Dangerous Liberty Podcast.
Now, if you guys don't know, I am a former sniper team leader, former Green Beret, a bunch of other things. And what I do for a living is not YouTube, right? We actually teach firearms tactics, and we actually specialize in teaching long range. That's what we do for a living here. And what I want to make very clear is, number one, I think that's a good video.
Thanks, Gary. Now, Gary is one of the biggest defenders of TPUSA in the official narrative. He goes to war about it literally every single day, attacking Candace Owens, Baron Coleman, and anyone else who has questions about the Charlie Kirk case.
So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to go through and show you some of the tactics and techniques that Candace uses to deceive millions at a time. She uses outright lies, she uses straw man arguments, she uses gross exaggeration, among many others. But here's just some of the things that she does that you can take these examples and you can see them in every single one of her episodes to create this fictitious narrative. And Candace Owens is a psyop to damage the right. It absolutely is. It's engineered, again, like it's textbook psychological and information operations. Thank you for reminding me to unsub. The guest is blind and so are you. Use this $5 to wipe. All right, kids, so today's episode is about the one lawyer that makes all lawyers look bad. And you know exactly who I'm talking about, Candace Owens' number one simp, and that is Baron Whisper Campaign Coleman. Now, Baron would probably describe himself as a disinterested party, but I gotta tell you, he's made himself Candace Owens' personal Baghdad Bob, just out there spreading propaganda left and right, lying, and he's made himself Candace Owens' personal attack dog. He goes after any and everyone that just points out the truth, the fact that Candace Owens has zero evidence of a single material claim. But being her lapdog, he's gonna go after anyone and everyone that's just reporting the truth.
But what if I told you he didn't always sound this way? What if I told you he used to say things the so-called conspiracy theorists say? Today I'm going to be showing you the evolution of his views, the exact pivot point where he became a full-on defender of the official narrative, to try and answer the question, is Paramount Tactical a Fed once and for all? This video has been a few months in the making, mainly because I'm lazy, but also because it really did take a long time to put all of this together. So if you enjoy this video or find it useful, please consider subscribing or following me on X if you're watching there. Without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so let's start at the very beginning. When it first happened, Gary believed Charlie was wearing body armor, and that the bullet deflected off of that and hit Charlie in the neck. Now, he believed this for a few reasons. The first being that he thought he could see the outline of the armor. Another reason is that he could see a mark on Charlie's shirt that he thought was from the bullet deflecting. Gary even thought it appeared that Charlie was hit in the chest. But the most interesting reason he believed he was wearing body armor is because he thought it was pretty much a guarantee that a 30-06 would leave an exit wound in a shot directly to the neck.
Right here, this is an outline. We can see an outline of his body armor. All right, there is a plate there. So he does have body armor, and then we see, before the wound even starts bleeding, we see something going on right below the collar line. So I suspect that a round hit right there, right at the collar line, and hit the edge of his plate and deflected or ricocheted directly upward. And this is why, again, I talked about it earlier as well, like from the side, I kept looking at the video that you can, there's a video that's almost directly to his left side, and I never see an exit wound. So if this was a round that went through and through the neck, you would almost guarantee to see an exit wound. There isn't one. And after watching this footage, I conclude that that round actually went up into his, at least his head cavity, if not into his cranial cavity.
So as you can see, he was convinced that Charlie was wearing body armor. But as the hours went by and more information came out, people started saying Charlie actually wasn't wearing any body armor. At that point, Gary admitted he was wrong about the armor, but he still couldn't make sense of why there wouldn't be an exit wound.
As you guys know, I posted that video talking about the body armor, all that other good stuff, and that is great. But one thing, folks, I do believe that I owe you a mea culpa. And there's nothing I hate worse than being wrong. And I try really hard not to be. But if and when I am wrong, I'm going to come clean and make sure you guys know. There is some new footage that I just got a little while ago that seems to indicate that Charlie was not wearing body armor. As you guys go through that footage, some of you were here last night, late last night. We're up till 2 a.m. plus, going through that footage that I had. And to me, it is very convincing that there's body armor. As a matter of fact, a few hours ago, I would have bet a whole bunch of money that he was wearing body armor. Well, I'll show you. I'll show you some of the pictures that I have that I just received. And this is supposedly moments before. And it is very clear that he does not have body armor on. Let me get rid of that comment. So this is what we have. And, typically body armor isn't coming with nipples, but we can see that we obviously have some sort of mic up here or something that is, I would say that that's a mic. That was my first indication. What I don't understand is there does seem to be like a continuous line going across there. And here's the problem that I have with some of that is the fact that that makes that entire footage a lot weirder. So anyways, I'm going to get some additional footage and I'm going to do a reanalysis of that. But the fact of the matter is, folks, when I'm wrong, I'm going to come clean and tell you that I'm wrong so that, you can always trust us. So we will take additional look at hopefully additional footage that's coming out. Coley with 30-06, there should have been an exit wound, correct? Even with it being in the neck. Yeah, I mean, you would think, and again, my explanation for there not being a exit wound was that it hit the top edge of body armor and it went up, and it still does look like something happens where it impacts the chest and goes up. I have a hard time believing that a 30-06 round hits collarbone and then just deflects upward. Weird things definitely do happen with bullets, but that would seem unlikely to say the least. Could 30-06 not punch all the way through if it were like a hollow point round? Hollow points expand. Hollow points are less likely to penetrate that much. But the fact is like, especially the neck area, like there's not a lot of, even if it hits the spine, it's pretty thin. Like this is like, I don't know, freaking with Charlie Kirk, he's a smaller guy than me. And, it's probably 8 to 10 inches thick of meat, and like rifles will penetrate quite easily 8 to 10 inches of meat and bone. So I do find it odd that we don't see an exit wound.
Funnily enough, he also said it would be quite easy for Mossad or the government to use a leftist as a patsy.
Ace doesn't mean that intel agencies like Mossad couldn't use the radical left as a proxy to remove people. I agree with that. I think, as a matter of fact, that's probably very easy to do, whether we're talking about Mossad or we're talking about government agencies in the United States.
So he ended that stream essentially saying, I was wrong about the body armor, but I don't have an answer for why there isn't an exit wound when he was hit with the 30-06. So I'm going to go back and look at more footage and see if I can figure this out. Well, just 2 days later, Gary came up with an answer. And what was that answer? His original explanation. He went back to thinking Charlie was wearing body armor. His reasoning was that Charlie might not have been wearing body armor when he showed up to UVU, but he could have put it on after he arrived.
After I got off that live stream, I was like, man, let me go through this, make sure if I got it wrong, let's figure this stuff out. But here's the problem that I have with all this. All right, so if he doesn't have plates on, did hit a plate, we're saying that a 30-06, and I know there's a question of even whether or not it's 30-06, and I'm perfectly fine entertaining those things as well. But regardless,
we'll talk about that a little bit later.
We have a rifle round that we're saying that we have a direct neck shot. Well, any rifle round, I don't care if it hits vertebrae, whatever else, we're going to have an exit wound. And that exit wound is going to be significantly larger than the entrance wound. We're going to see profuse bleeding right away, just like we saw. Everything that we saw in the front we're going to see at least that in the back, and we never see that. And there's footage
and probably more extensive. That exit wound's going to be 2 to 3 times the size. It's going to rip and tear tissue with it. To your
100%.
point, I didn't know that there was no exit wound until you brought that up to me. That changes a lot of possibilities here for me. To your point, 30-06, I've got 2 Browning Belgian-made 30-06s. You shoot a deer in the rib cage and it's going through both ribs. So no, a human vertebrae is not stopping a 30-06 round at 200 meters. It's just physically not a thing.
And for everybody else saying, it hit his collarbone. A collarbone is not going to deflect around like that at 30-06 either, or really even any.
Maybe a pistol round. Maybe you could entertain. But a high-powered rifle round is not going to deflect like that off collarbone. So let's
that collarbone was there.
Like I told Gary, and when we were talking privately, I thought this was a deflection off the vest. That was my initial immediate based off that. But then we have all the photos, which I'll pull up, that do clearly show Charlie Kirk does not have a vest or plates on in these specific photos. But as Gary's point brought up is we have no continuity of timeline of events here. So in these particular, and there's 2 other photos, you can tell that Charlie does not have bulletproof plates on. I don't think that's really debatable. I think the question then becomes, is that necessarily, did he not put plates on? I think that's where we're moving to now. So what we're thinking potentially, right, is we have all these pictures of Charlie in no vest, but were those early in the day? Was he doing a sound check? Did he get an elevated security threat from his security team that said, hey, we need to go throw on the vest?
I'll show the sequence that I have captured for the that I think does clearly show a vest.
This I automatically thought looked like he had plates on and got hit in the
Well, if you can see this, you can see where everything looks flat. Even here in that first picture at the very top, it looks like there is an outline of a plate. And then he gets hit. That plate, you can see the bottom of that plate, it moves up. It continues to move up. You see this whole mass moving up with his chest, and then it starts to fall downward. But you see it, and then his shirt gets almost tucked underneath those plates. I feel like that's pretty conclusive. It's still not, guaranteed or anything like that. And again, I'm perfectly fine with being wrong. But here's my thing. At the end of the day, it's like people tell me if he doesn't have plates, that's like you tell me, hey, Gary, there's not a hole in your tire, but my tire is continuing to leak air. There's something there. And when we don't have an exit wound, and when we have the shirt doing what it's doing, you got to explain those physics to me. You got to come up with a better explanation for me.
Gary, I think we're both in agreement. There is a 0% chance this is a direct hit to the neck with a 30-06 round.
I think there's 0%.
I don't think it's 0%.
Yeah.
He also talked a little bit about the Rooftop video and that he found the narrative surrounding it to be implausible, saying whatever they had in their hands wasn't long enough to be a Mauser rifle.
This kid snuck the 30-06 in his skinny jeans, and we've seen pictures of that. A viewer sent me this, guys. This is what a 30-06 looks like if you try to put it in pants. It is obnoxious. And this one, I don't think even has a giant scope on it. As you can see, I mean, this was not snuck in this kid's skinny jeans. Was it broken down, brought in a backpack? Maybe. If that's the case, he broke it down, he reassembled it, he takes the shot. Well, we see him fleeing the scene. He doesn't have this rifle. So he broke it down again in 10, 15 seconds, put it in a backpack, fled the scene, and then reassembled it and put it in the woods for the police to find. How's that story sound to you?
Yeah, it sounds pretty implausible. Like in the video that shows him jumping off the roof, he does have something in his hand, but what it doesn't look like is something long enough to be 40 inches. I actually included that piece in that video that I posted earlier, and I took it out just because the video was getting long. I was like, it's kind of hard to tell dimensions from that shitty ass video that was taken on a potato. But the it doesn't look like a rifle that's 40 inches, and that's a Mauser M68, I think they said it was. The
Yeah.
shortest variant of that is 43 inches, I think. And like that rifle, I got a rifle right up there by the 2A up there. That one is 40 inches, so it'd be shorter. And that doesn't look like what he's carrying. Like just in
No.
comparison to the dimensions of his body and how long it looks, it doesn't make sense. And it does seem very unlikely that he'd be able to, pull that barreled action out of that stock and then throw it in a bag.
Now, some people might see all that and say, yeah, but he was only saying all that stuff because Valhalla VFT was saying it and Gary was just matching his energy. But they would be wrong. Because here's Gary the very next day saying definitively that a 30-06 to the neck would have left an exit wound.
Now let's talk about the most significant problem with this idea that it was a direct hit to the neck. And that is the fact that if it was a direct hit to the neck is it's fairly thin, and it's 8 to 10 inches. It is not super dense. And even if that projectile hit his vertebrae, we would 100, it's a 30-06. Any rifle caliber, doesn't matter even if it hits his vertebrae, we would see an exit wound. And there is no evidence. And folks, the exit wound would be significantly larger than the entrance wound. We would see just as much profuse bleeding from the exit wound as we saw from the entrance wound. That doesn't exist. To me, that alone forces us to come up with some additional reasons as to what's going on with that projectile. And the only thing that makes sense is that whether it was a body armor, whether it was, I don't know, doesn't matter. That is that we have some sort of deflection that takes that projectile straight from this way up to that way. And I told you guys in the last video, if you look at, and I'm not even gonna show it, like that entrance wound is much larger than it should be. The neck has a lot of elastic tissue. Typically what we'd see in an entrance wound is a very, very small wound. And probably, given the frame rate that we're looking at in the slow motion, we probably would, if it was a direct hit, we probably wouldn't even see an entrance wound at all in the video. But it opens up very large, very quick, and of course we have extremely profuse bleeding coming from his neck. But I do believe the reason that we have such a large entrance wound is because we have a projectile that hits something, is deformed, is deflected upward, possibly even fragmented, and then we have a much more angular entrance like this, which makes the wound larger. But probably most importantly, that's the only thing that explains no exit wound with a 30-06. Like there's almost nothing else that can explain that. So as I see it right now, what we're left with is video footage and pictures that contradict one another. And there may be a very logical, good explanation that we're just not aware of right now. But let's just say I got it completely wrong. Let's say he wasn't wearing body armor. We're kind of left in Bizarro world because there's nothing else that explains the physics and the ballistics that we see taking place in the video footage.
So he was back to the body armor theory. But then even more info came out that made him again think Charlie wasn't wearing body armor.
Well, and this is where things get weird too. Number one, I do feel like I got pretty good confirmation that he was not wearing a vest. And I'll show you some media. Let me see if I have this post. So this is a post that I got. I'm going to share this up here. A DM. This is somebody I was talking to here that is close with the Kirk team. So I just spoke with a senior FBI SA that has reviewed the initial forensic report. Blows me away, but the official narrative is that there was no body armor. This is a guy that said, hey, I know Charlie personally. I know he always wears body armor. I communicated this to one of Charlie's security guys who was not present that day, unfortunately, whose first comment was wet. So if I'm wrong on that, and it looks like I'm fine with it. Just like I told you guys in the last video, or the video before last. That being said, that makes things weirder in my opinion. And I was actually, and I'll tell you for what it's worth, I did get tagged in another post that actually said, another guy saying that he actually talked to someone that was the trauma surgeon that confirmed that he did have body armor. So we still have conflicting information. I'm going to go with if I just looked at it objectively, I think at this point we could say that he probably didn't have body armor, which again, to me makes some things weird because we don't have an exit wound or one that I can see.
And so from this point forward, he went back and forth on whether or not he thought Charlie was wearing body armor. But what didn't change was his belief that there should have been an exit wound.
And if it's indeed a 30-06, I have no reason not to believe that to believe it's not. Like, we're talking about a lot of expulsion of biological material. So we're talking, meat, blood, bone. I don't see, like, an exit wound would be obvious. So far I haven't seen any evidence of an exit wound, which is one of the problems that I have. And I know people have talked about a hollow point or a soft hunting point. We would still, it's, again, the human neck is very small. Even if it ran into the scapula, I would think that round would exit. Margarita Diaz, being at that distance and the power of the weapon, it would have had an exit wound. I agree. I think there is a 99+% chance that we should have seen an exit wound. Now, one of the things that keeps coming up, and I agree with everybody, we do not have confirmation that it was indeed a 30-06. We do have those leaked pictures from the ATF. I do believe I have pretty good solid confirmation that those are legitimate pictures, but I don't think there's been anyone to come out and give an official statement on that weapon. It wouldn't surprise me at all, and would be a little bit more if there's not if he's not wearing body armor, it would make more sense for what we're seeing, that we're not talking about a 30-06. There are some things, again, although unlikely, there are some things that could contribute to what we're seeing as far as the ballistics involved, and that is, some sort of frangible ammo. But even that, I mean, it takes some penetration typically for that frangible ammo to actually break apart. And I would still expect to see pieces, as much energy as we're talking about, we would still expect to see some things. We would still expect to see some sort of exit wound for sure. I just got additional conflicting confirmation from somebody else saying that he did have body armor on. I'm lost when it comes to explaining the ballistics. And I'm also not 100% sure why they wouldn't say he had body armor on if he didn't have body armor on. If he didn't have body armor on, I have a hard time explaining it. I gave you guys reasons as to why he could possibly have body armor on and them deny it. That part is speculation. What I do know, and I can tell you for a fact, there is custom thin body armor that's rated 3+. That would be very difficult to detect, that is custom fit and molded to a person. Do they include anatomy on there like nipples? I don't know, but it's a lot more plausible than a drone shooting someone or a camera phone or any of those other things. Also, those same people would say, again, like if the narrative right now, the government narrative, the official narrative is that he wasn't wearing body armor, that seems strange to me. So take that for what it's worth.
He also talks about the possibility of different ammo types being used and how unlikely that is to be the explanation.
Do y'all think the round could have been soft point, like a 75 grain Hornady tap SBR? Wouldn't that stay internal and not exit? And this is where we get into the quagmire of, yeah, it's possible. I mean, if this kid's hand loading, or if it's another shooter from a different location, they're using something else, like, we can't rule out all possibilities. All we can do is pull from our experience and say, hey, this is kind of typical, and then we get into atypical, and then we get into unlikely, and then we get into like almost like 1 in a billion, still possible. I mean, it's possible that somebody from 5 miles away shot a 338 round up into the air and freaking hit Charlie Kirk in the neck. I mean, it's not impossible, but it's just doesn't make sense. I don't know. What are a few factors you think could cause a 30-06 not to have an exit wound with direct hit, assuming no armor deflection? Let's say backwards force from spinal trauma, maybe. Like, I can't come up with a reasonable explanation, and that's what we're talking about. Unless, again, if we say that he hand loaded these rounds and he went with a You know, if he was somehow shooting a super light 100-ish grain, let's say 100 to 120 grain, and he was shooting at like 2,000 feet per second or less, maybe. But even then, folks, like, I
Yeah,
can't stress how much like there is no flesh here. Like, I think that if I went out there with a 9 mil, and a 9 mil has about 1/7 the energy of the average 30-06 round. 1/7. I think a 9 mil would end up very possibly, if it was FMJ, very possibly we'd still see some sort of exit wound.
It's too much soft tissue, man.
Like, there's a lot of strange things here that have a lot of left and right variability, but I think the one thing that's really hard to explain is a 30-06 round shooting a man in the neck and not seeing an exit wound.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's insane. Like, I just don't even know how to process that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
He even agreed that the bullet was influenced by magic.
What makes the most sense is history repeating itself. We have a magic bullet. We do seem to have at least a, I don't know, magically influenced bullet. Jody Carruthers says, does anyone think this could have been planned by someone within TPUSA? It's an awful thought.
I'm not addressing it.
What do you think?
I'm not addressing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an awful thought. We'll leave it at that.
Here he talks about body armor a little bit more, the lack of an exit wound, and how he is going to be buying ballistic gel and different types of ammo to see if hitting someone in the neck and not getting any penetration is even replicable. Or as Gary likes to put it, replicatable.
I'm pretty much sure, I'm convinced that he wasn't wearing body armor at this point. That's where I'm at. And I'll tell you, I still go back and forth, and tomorrow I may go back and forth. At the time when we first saw this, okay, this was literally the day one when we came across this, and I'm still going back and forth to some extent. And Marcus doesn't think that he had body armor, and that's fine. I'm probably wrong with that, but I have a hard time then, and I still have a hard time now reconciling the fact that we have a 30-06 round that we don't have an exit wound. Right now, as it stands, I just want you guys to know, I do think that I was wrong in that first video. I do think that he wasn't wearing a vest. I still have a really hard time reconciling the fact that we don't have an exit wound from a 30-06. Now, what I did do is I have ordered some very expensive, at my own cost, some ballistic gel dummies that have all the anatomy. Well, I ordered the ones specifically with skeletons in them from the waist up. So we're going to do some testing with some 30-06 rounds in different projectiles, different ammunition types, and see if it's even replicatable that we can actually hit someone directly in the neck and not get a penetration. I think it's going to be hard, and I don't know what those will result.
And just 3 days later, Gary was once again convinced that Charlie Kirk was wearing body armor, going so far as to say he was even 90% sure he knew the exact brand and model the armor was.
But I also have found some additional new evidence that I think is very clear that at a minimum, he was wearing level 3A plates or level 3A body armor. I'll say this, I'm 90+% sure I know exactly what he was wearing. I got it on order.
He also talked again about potentially the government or some other entity intentionally radicalizing people and pointing them towards a target, and how it's easier than we think.
I absolutely believe, as we discussed in our last show, that there's a pattern here that I think we need to look at the government potentially, or some sort of entity out there, intentionally radicalizing people and pointing them in the direction of certain targets, right? Potential targets. So I think there's that. Then we also have the just the fact that crazy people do crazy things. I mean, we can't say that every single mass shooting or an attack on a politician or whatever is a big government conspiracy. Some of those are probably more random than we think, and just human nature doing the weird things that human nature does. But and I still don't 100% know where this falls in all of that. What I do know is that, or what I do believe, is that it's easier to radicalize somebody, point them in a direction, and get them to do things more easily than we think.
All right, now we're going to skip forward about a week. This is the point when Stephen Gardner first broke the story that the bullet crashed through the C2 through C6 vertebrae. As you can imagine, after seeing everything else in this video, Gary thought it sounded like madness. He said the only way it could be plausible is if body armor was involved.
Okay, here's what I've gathered. The injury to Charlie Kirk's neck starts at the C2 neck vertebrae. The bullet crashed through C2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, sadly, completely destroying Charlie Kirk's spinal cord. This is what made him tense up. This is what made his heart stop beating and why gushes of blood versus squirts of blood were coming out of him. The doctor found the main portion of the bullet near his T1 thoracic vertebrae, so near the spine, down where the neck vertebrae connect to the upper back vertebrae.
So not only is that information pretty spectacular, I think it changes some of my analysis if it's true. So we know here on this anatomy chart, we can see the approximate location of, you know, this diagram's Adam's apple. And we know that that impact that we see, the wound that we see on Charlie is slightly below that. Now we know from multiple angles that Charlie wasn't sitting perfectly straight up. He was kind of slouching forward. So I've actually moved this graphic a couple of degrees. I canted it just a couple of degrees. It's probably not exact, but it's more accurate than just keeping it straight up and down because that's not how he was sitting. So what we're saying is that even though this bullet is coming at around a 10-degree downward angle, if it just lodged into T1, okay, that makes perfect sense. But what we're also saying is that somehow a
bullet crashed through C2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Folks, that is nuts to me because we have a downward angle. So that's not just changing the direction by 90 degrees, it's more than 90 degrees. And that doesn't make sense to me. So not only did we have this round basically enter below his Adam's apple and hit C2, C3, C4, and C5, and then also hit T1, but we also had bullet fragments go downward and potentially decimate his heart. From a ballistics and physics standpoint, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me if we're dealing with that. Now, going back to what he also said regarding soft point or full metal jacket.
Also, near T1, but not next to the bullet, were multiple fragments of the bullet. Now, a full metal jacket 30-06 round would have gone right through Charlie, would have gone right through the bone of Charlie. A soft point 30-06 would likely have mushroomed, but caused massive amounts of damage, which we didn't see. We also know for a fact, no bullet left his body. There was no blood spray, no blood spatter, and no hole in the banner behind him.
So I completely agree with that. Nothing that we're seeing here can be explained by a full metal jacket round, a soft tip hunting round, and then the fact that we do not have an exit wound is one of the most inexplicable, with a 30-06, is one of the most inexplicable parts of this entire case. And of course, that has been talked about ad nauseum, right? We've covered it here. Thousands of other people have covered it. We see ballistic tests. None of that makes sense. It's one of the most inexplicable portions of this entire situation. There's no doubt about it. Now, I do think there are a couple options here that can explain, if this is true, that can explain this, and we're gonna jump into that. All right, folks, so I'm back there editing this video, and we're a little over 10 minutes in, and it's gonna be much, much longer. I'm going over some very technical stuff to make sure that you understand what I'm talking about. So I'm gonna end up releasing that as a second part. This is not meant to be a cliffhanger or anything else. We're just talking about, you know, at least another 20, 30 minutes of video to really go through what I'm talking about. And I'll just tell you straight up, the only thing that makes sense to me that explains the physics, the ballistics, the description and mechanism of injury, everything that's going on with where bullet fragments ended up, is a combination of ballistic protection and frangible ammunition. That combination is really the only plausible explanation why we have bullet fragments going all the way up to, again, the C2, going all the way down to the heart, and still not having any sort of exit wound. Because I do have like, if there were actually bullet fragments in C2 through whatever else, I almost think that like just a direct shot to the neck, I have a hard time seeing how bullet fragments would go upward and possibly downward too, right? I mean, what do you guys think about that?
I think it's crazy. I think it doesn't make any sense at all. And
This next clip I think is important because he flat out says he doesn't have a problem with conspiracy theorists because they are just trying to figure out the truth as to what happened and because they have rightfully lost trust in the American government who have lied to them time and time again. He also again talks about how unlikely it is that there wouldn't be an exit wound and mentions the fact that Charlie's security team failed.
All right. I agree with most of that, right? I don't really have a problem with conspiracy theories. I think what people are trying to do in earnest out there is trying to figure out what happened. And the other big problem that we have is that we have an American people that have completely lost faith, and rightfully so, in the American government and the three-letter agencies that are supposed to tell us the truth, but we've found them lying time and time again. I generally agree with the assessment that it is super unlikely that we would hit a man in the neck. All right. My neck is, I told you guys last week, I measured my neck from front to back. It's about 5.5 inches. And I have to get like my neck, I have to get my freaking shirts tailored every time I get dress shirts because I have a really thick neck. Chances are Charlie Kirk's neck was around 4 inches. So unless there's some sort of other things involved that can explain where all that energy went, it is really, really hard to reconcile the fact that we don't have an exit wound. It really is. So, and that's the problem, right? And yeah, you know, that's definitely the biggest problem. So I think we can say right or wrong that the security team failed, right? Their job was to keep Charlie Kirk alive. And that didn't happen.
Here he again mentions the fact that it's reasonable for people to have alternative theories due to the lack of an exit wound. He also says that he thinks the shooting would have took some planning and that the shooter would almost have to have gone to UVU at least once in advance.
The number one thing that people say is there's no exit wound, therefore it's something else. I would say.
I mean,
and that one's actually reasonable, you know.
it is, you know, that's absolutely reasonable. I agree with that.
Walk through the tunnel, go up into the parking garage, come out, walk down a little utility road, walk right up to the Losi building, walk into the Losi building, go out the back of the Losi building, walk up a set of stairs, you're on the roof. And then you just step over a wall, lay down, put the rifle together, run to the corner, shoot Charlie Kirk, and then get the hell off the roof into the woods and you're out. I mean, it's like, you know, it seems like he had to have planned this because it was so well executed, even though, you know, the outcome sucks. But I'm just saying, you got to admit, like, it was like, you know.
I think there's zero chance that there wasn't. I don't even know. I don't even know if I want to say like significant planning, but it took some planning to confirm some of those things. And one of the things that you and I were just talking about right before we jumped on here, it's one thing to know that you can go right up to the roof and all those other things. The thing that you were talking about and we were discussing right before we went live was knowing for a fact that he had a line of sight from the edge of that building.
Right.
That is one component of this that, I mean, he almost would have had to have gone out there at some point onto that roof, into that exact spot to be able to confirm that for sure.
This next clip is one of the most important ones of all because not only does he say there's not enough evidence to say Tyler pulled the trigger, he says there's not even enough evidence to say Tyler was at UVU. Now, to be fair to Gary, he does say he thinks the evidence against Tyler is solid, but saying there's not enough evidence to say Tyler pulled the trigger or that he can't be sure Tyler was at UVU are things he would never even dream of saying today. And to be clear, he said these things after the charging documents and reports about DNA came out.
But besides that, the fact that he moves backwards, you can see the physics involved, and he's clearly hit from the front. Does that clearly confirm that Tyler Robinson was the one that shot him? No. All right. I can't say that. We don't have enough evidence for that. And that's what I'm going to be honest with you guys about. You know, the problem that we have with all these other influencers is that's what they're doing. They're influencing you into a decision by pointing to all these different things and telling you that is very, basically giving this presentation conclusively when it's not conclusive at all. And by the way, it's usually filled with a lot of bad science and a lot of supposition that is just not correct. We can't say for sure that he was shot by Tyler Robinson, but what I feel very confidently about is the fact that he was shot from the front. Videos and pictures throughout UVU, there's all of that. So I think, you know, if they called me up today and, you know, asked me to be a jury, I will say that I don't know for a fact that Tyler Robinson was or was not there. I think there's not, we definitely don't have access to enough information to convict the guy outright. I think the evidence is pretty solid so far, and it's about where we'd expect to be with a murder trial like this. One thing that I want to go ahead, people are saying that my mic is cutting out. Is it clear back there?
Probably the Wi-Fi. It's not.
Now compare that with how he sounds these days. Unfortunately, the audio was bad there. It was on his end, so there was nothing I could do about it. I'm sure you heard him mention his chat saying he was cutting out, and a quick look at his YouTube comments show that's how it was for everyone. But you could at least make out the majority of what he said.
It's time for the moment you've been waiting for.
When I set out to make this video, I wanted to find the exact point where he stopped saying all the things I've shown you in this video and became a full-on defender of TPUSA and the official narrative. I believe I have found that exact moment. Take a look at this clip.
Oh, the big announcement that I wanted to make. I want to make sure I get this live. Now, you guys know, many of you maybe even started following me because the first couple videos I put out, I talked about body armor. And I've always stated, number one, even in that very first video, I was very clear. I was like, hey, I don't know this for a fact. And I've always clearly delineated, hey, this is what I think. I don't have a lot of proof of this. And by the way, I've also presented proof of like, hey, you know what? There's definitely times when I think it doesn't look like he's wearing body armor. I've been really clear about this. I will just tell you right now, I got confirmation, what I believe is very clear confirmation today. And it's from a guest that I will probably, not probably, we will have on the show in the next, it will be a groundbreaking interview, by the way. But it's a person that was there, and he confirmed for me that he was not wearing any ballistic protection. That's what he told me. So at this point, I will happily say that I was wrong, and I'm not married to anything. I gave my interpretation of what I believe was taking place at the time. Come to find out I was wrong. But I've always been very careful and very clear that, hey, this is my opinion and I could be wrong. And so it is my responsibility that when I get new information, which I got today, saying, hey, you know what? I was wrong about that.
So he says he's going to have someone on his show who was there that day and is in the know to be able to confirm that Charlie wasn't wearing body armor. Well, there's only one person that fits that description, Brian Harpole, because Brian did indeed end up going on Gary's show. So this let me know that at the absolute latest, the first time he spoke to Brian was on November the 4th, and that most likely it was even before that. But one of the benefits of me taking so damn long to finish this video is the fact that Gary actually ended up confirming this himself about a month later. He said, "Not once do I claim in this video that I spoke to Brian Harpole 7 days after Charlie Kirk's assassination. I did not speak to Brian Harpole until November the 2nd. Project Constitution lies again." So now we know it was November the 2nd, and this is when he started being a night and day different person, in my opinion, when it comes to the Charlie Kirk case and became the broken record Gary that you all know today. Here he is the very next day after talking to Brian Harpole for the first time.
Now, I know there are people out there that claim to be ballistic experts, and they say there is no way a 30-06 would not have an exit wound. Well, first of all, they are, I don't know what they are. All right. They're incorrect. The neck is it's fairly thin, and it's, 8 to 10 inches. It is not super dense. And even if that projectile hit his vertebrae, we would it's a 30-06. Any rifle caliber, doesn't matter even if it hits his vertebrae, we would see an exit wound. That I can tell you. Here's what we would need to know to determine whether or not to have any expectation of a result. We need to know the variables that would help us reach to that result. Hopefully we can agree on that. So what we need in a ballistics assessment is we need to know first of all, we need to know, hey, was this box ammunition, or was this factory ammunition, or was this hand loaded ammunition? We don't know that. The other thing that we would need to know is the weight of the bullet. All right, is this 150 grain? Is this 110 grain? Is this a 90 grain bullet, or is this 190, 210 grain bullet? Like, those are all options on 30-06. We don't know any of that. We don't know if it was a full metal jacket round. We don't know if it was a soft point, if it was a ballistic tip, if it was frangible. We don't know any of that. That's another element that would make a huge difference in whether or not we would expect that round to have it exit wound. We don't know the condition of the ammunition. Is this old ammunition? Was this stored properly? Was it exposed to the elements? We don't know that either. There's probably 5 or 10 different things, and I have actually a list back there of kind of just the things that would affect whether or not a projectile would or would not, exit Charlie's neck. Now, if we get to the trial and they say, hey, look, you know what? They were using federal gold match, 180 grain, 200 grain, 175, even 150 grain. And like, we didn't have an exit. Okay. All right, fine. All right. Gary's now all in on, hey, something's crazy here. But all the variables, everything that we need to know to determine whether or not we should see some sort of different result, we don't have any of that information. We don't know what it is.
Sound familiar? At this point, Gary says he will be starting a very extensive and scientific-based ballistic testing regimen the next day.
So with that being said, one of the things I was going to do today is do some ballistic testing. I didn't get to it today because of some other work requirements. I'm going to try to do that tomorrow. We're going to start a very extensive scientific-based testing regimen, and we're going to go through a lot of 30-06 ammunition. So there's going to be lots of ballistic testing.
Yeah, so he never published the results of that scientific-based testing regimen. I wonder why that is. Maybe the results didn't turn out the way he'd hoped. Now we'll fast forward about a week from the pivot point, and Gary's heel turn is now complete, with Blake Bednar's identifying him as the only vet that believes Charlie was hit with a 30-06, and Gary going into his usual spiel about how you need to know this, you need to know that.
I'm going to guess that you know your way around using a weapon. You're the only person with military background that knows weapons well. You're the only person, and I'm not being facetious here.
I agree with it. I think it's
crazy. You are the only guy that I have found that served our country, that knows weapons, and that believes that a 30-06 did that.
Let me qualify that just a little bit. So,
okay.
First of all, most guys in the military, and even snipers, quite frankly, don't know that much about ballistics. When I got out of the military, even when I was in the military, so first of all, I was an 18 Bravo. That's a weapons sergeant inside U.S. Army Special Forces. Now, I will say I've talked to a lot of military and weapons guys that believe like I do. They're just not on the internet. Now, this is what is a fact, and I don't care what anybody else says on the internet. To come to a predicted outcome with ballistics, there's some basic facts that you have to know. It's just in the way, like, if I saw a car, if I looked at a car and I said that car can or can't do 200 miles an hour, but I'm just looking at it from the outside, that's a pretty stupid statement to me. I have no idea what engine is in it. I have no idea what transmission's in it. But there are some basic facts that you have to know before you can come to any sort of ballistic conclusion or prediction. And that is, number one, what type of ammo was used? Is that store-bought ammunition, or is that box ammunition, or hand-loaded ammunition? I need to know what the projectile type is. Is that FMJ? Is that frangible? Whatever else we got going on. I need to know the bullet weight, right? We need to know the grain weight of that ammunition. Was it a 100 grain round? Was it 175, 180, or whatever else? I need to know ultimately the muzzle velocity. We don't know what that is. And then I also need to know what condition that ammo is. I've definitely seen old ammo do lots of weird things. And there's many military folks out there. If you shot nearly as much ammunition as I did in the military, you've come across things like squibs. You've come across things like hang fire. So a squib is a round that you shoot that doesn't exit the barrel. That happens. It happens. I wouldn't say frequently, but it happens. And if you've shot 100,000 rounds, you're going to see it happen. Hang fire. You pull the trigger, nothing happens, and then like 3 seconds later, the gun goes off, or the ammunition actually ignites and goes off. I've seen rounds explode midair. I've seen rounds tumble. I've seen rounds do all of these things. So, for other people out in the general public, even if they're vet bros or, they were in the military or whatever else, for them to say, I know what I should expect out of that round without knowing those basic parameters is horseshit. I mean, it just is.
Gary, I think we're both in agreement. There is a 0% chance this is a direct hit to the neck with a 30-06 round.
I think there's 0%.
I don't think it's 0%.
Yeah.
So
and that's outside of like some sort of anomalous round. Like I got a bunch of 30-06 ammo over there. I have everything from standard ammunition to hunting ammunition to low recoil ammunition. And here's the thing. This is the other ridiculous thing that I've seen. I've seen a lot of people doing ballistic testing, and they're using like everyone's conclusion about 30-06 is what they've experienced. And what most people have experienced, they've experienced using a 155 grain round up to like a 210 grain round for hunting primarily. That's the 99 percentile of people's experience. And yes, I can predict what that round is going to do at 27 to 3,000 feet per second. It's going to exit. What I haven't seen them do is like there's the other 75% of non-standard ammunition offerings that I've seen not a single person test. I heard of them talk about it, and I'm going to, but we've been busy, and I will get to do that.
Again, he never did release the results of these tests. I believe it's because the results didn't align with his position. But other people did publish their results. A number of different people have tested many different types of ammo, from lower grain to soft point to frangible.
Guess what this is? The only frangible 30-06 rounds on the internet. You're looking at them right here.
Just get it up close here. So, okay, folks, so that's what we're shooting, okay? So frangible 30-06, they're very hard to find.
And actually, a couple interesting notes about these. These are from 1945 stockpiles. The only reason that is actually extremely notable is because the whole story from the FBI is that Tyler Robinson shot a 1945, his grandpa's Mauser or whatever. So it's like, it is not 100% impossible that he also had these frangible bullets from 1945, and he's such a stupid that he didn't realize that they were from 1945 and he shot them anyway.
We are shooting hickory smoked young turkeys, and we're gonna put a concrete block behind it. Here we go. Think I'm gonna be able to hit that? I think I will. We're going through bone.
And if you guys appreciate me doing this in the freezing cold, not like Jesse in heavy duty country wearing tank tops out in Texas, hit that like button. All right, so here's what we have. Pretty sizable entry hole. Some pretty good damage, nice wound cavity. Come on the other side, and that was a pretty direct hit, right? That went straight through that bone. Blew out the side and went straight through the bone. And it wasn't an edge shot, right? So the hole's actually closer to the middle. And you can see that bone that's thicker than human vertebrae went right through it, blew it out. And it also made another big chunk out of that cinder block. All right, so what's the takeaway here? Well, we shot just about everything you could think of, hard and soft. Obviously, we have to look at the slow-mo, but I mean, frangible ammo, 5.56, 223, has less power less foot-pounds of force hitting. It can be a fast round, and it is smaller, but in this case, it went straight through the bone, everything else. So I would say, even with the frangible 30-06, that has significantly more power at the 140 yards. I would say frangible is not going to make a difference. It's still going to blow his neck out.
And the shot comes in, and it's just going to replay that over and over here so you can see it. So again, the shot's coming in downhill, like together. This is with the reduced recoil load. The thinking was, hey, we're going to shoot the lightest 30-06 load we could buy that would hit a bone at an angle, and maybe that would make a difference. That's the whole setup. That's what we're trying to do here. So let's see what happens. Oh, his neck overpressured too, but watch this again and watch the motion of the roast, and it goes boom. It's flying that way. You can clearly see it's being pushed by the bullet. Okay, we used everything from 150 grain full metal jackets. We used 180 grain ballistic tips. Those are actually behave like hollow points. We have 220 grain soft points. We have here a 125 grain soft point and another 125 grain ballistic tip. And don't know why I wrote 6 up there. My bad. Five separate loads. Every one of them went through and through. So,
by the way, shout out to Chris for using that graphic that I edited. I didn't even notice it the first time I watched it a while back. All right, so back to the Blake interview. By this point, Gary had pivoted so hard that he couldn't even concede that the neck is basically the most vulnerable place to be shot.
Well, would you agree, like, probably our neck is the most vulnerable spot?
In what way? Like, I mean, like vertebrae or some of the.
Let's go with the lack of support. I mean, I understand you have your vertebrae back here, but
I mean, he's literally just playing stupid here. He's talked about how vulnerable the neck is himself time and time again. It's part of why he was so convinced that there should be an exit wound and kept going back to the body armor theory, because he couldn't explain the lack of an exit wound without it.
Yes, it would. We would expect a round to completely go through, just zip through a human neck, which is very little tissue and it's not very dense. But even then, folks, like, I can't stress how much like there is no flesh here. Like, I think that if I went out there with a 9mm, and a 9mm has about 1/7 the energy of the average 30-06 round, 1/7, I think a 9mm would end up very possibly, if it was FMJ, very possibly we'd still see some sort of exit wound.
It's too much soft tissue.
But the fact is like, especially the neck area, like, there's not a lot of, even if it hits the spine, it's pretty thin. Like, I generally agree with the assessment that it is super unlikely that we would hit a man in the neck. All right. My neck is, I told you guys last week, I measured my neck from front to back. It's about 5.5 inches. And I have to get my freaking shirts tailored every time I get dress shirts because I have a really thick neck. Chances are Charlie Kirk's neck was around 4 inches. So unless there's some sort of other things involved that can explain where all that energy went, it is really, really hard to reconcile the fact that we don't have an exit wound. It really is. So, and that's the problem, right? Now let's talk about the most significant problem with this idea that it was a direct hit to the neck. And that is the fact that if it was a direct hit to the neck is it's fairly thin, and it's 8 to 10 inches. It is not super dense. And even if that projectile hit his vertebrae, we would 100, it's a 30-06. Any rifle caliber, doesn't matter even if it hits his vertebrae, we would see an exit wound.
And by this point, he's also all over X defending TPUSA in the official narrative. And now all of a sudden, there's a lot of good reasons for why there wouldn't be an exit wound.
What is your best guess for no exit wound with no vest? Well, I think Matt and I have kind of hit that pretty hard. There's a lot of good reasons, and we don't know what the round was. Like that's. Let's just say I got it completely wrong. Let's say he wasn't wearing body armor. We're kind of left in Bizarro world because there's nothing else that explains the physics and the ballistics that we see taking place in the video footage.
Now, obviously, I don't think I need to spend a ton more time showing you Gary acting like Gary of today. So I'm just going to touch on a couple more things in particular. The first is something Gary says about the C2 through C6 vertebrae information that Stephen Gardner put out. Take a look.
Andrew Colvett, he's a spokesman for TPUSA. And then he went out there and he, said that the Superman bones and things like that. And it was just meant to be like an inspirational side note. And people took that and ran with it and over exaggerated it. And again, it was a straw man. Oh, you're supposed to make me believe that he just had the bones of Superman. A great explanation. That's not what it was.
No.
And the other thing when we're talking about this, to be clear, is I did a video on this and I talked about it. Like, basically what was relayed to even Stephen Gardner directly from Andrew Colvett is that what was said was the C2 was hit, and then like the C5, C6, and then the T1, I believe it was. The point is like, no one's saying that was the trajectory. What is saying is that there was damage to those, but everyone turned that into, hey, it hit his C2, and then it went straight down into enlarged in the C7. I don't think that's what happened, or the T1. I don't think that's what happened.
So he says here that nobody was saying that the trajectory hit the C2 and then went down and through the C3 through C6 vertebrae, that they were just saying damage was done to those vertebrae. But that's not true. Brian Harpole himself spelled it out very clearly on the Sean Ryan show.
The doctor, and again, this is not a non-disclosure violation, but the doctor came out there and told us. And then they also told chief of staff. So the bullet came in and hit the vertebra. So it came in and then tore up everything in the wound cavity, hit the vertebra, crushed it, shattered it, turned, crushed the second one, turned, kept going down all the way. I think they said C6.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it's like, why not put that info out? Why not put it out? And then
why wouldn't they put that out?
And if do me a favor, don't make me do it. It's not my job. And so then it got to here, and you're exactly right. And then hit, I think, 6, and then fragged.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. He was very clearly talking about the bullet trajectory, not just the damage. All right, the last thing I want to talk about is MLK. MLK is an example that Gary constantly brings up to try and support his position on the Charlie Kirk case, even though he knows damn well it's a terrible comparison. So I'm going to show a certain fact about the MLK case that I think is going to surprise a lot of people. But first, here's Gary talking about it.
Again, all you got to do is look at Martin Luther King. Now, what I've been hearing all over the internet is anytime that you shoot a man with a 30-06, it's going to blow right through him with, there's no contingencies in there. It's like, it's going to blow right through them. It's going to take his head off, all these things. Well, what we have is Martin Luther King. He was shot in the right side of the face. The bullet went through his jawbone, went into his neck right here, and actually got lodged in the back of his back. And it was so inconsequential. Yes, it killed him, but we did not have an exit wound. And he even had an open casket. And then other people will say, well, it hit his mandible. Well, okay, so what's your point?
Well, Gary, I guess my point would be that you're completely wrong about there not being an exit wound. There was one, just not two. Now, I'm sure that sounds ridiculous to a lot of you right now, but it's the truth. But don't take my word for it. Take the House Select Committee on Assassination's word for it, who was formed by Congress to investigate the Kennedy and MLK assassinations. Okay, so here we are on the official National Archives government site where we can see the committee's findings. So let's scroll on down here. It says, the bullet fractured Dr. King's jaw, exited the lower part of the face, and re-entered the body in the neck area. So like I said, there was an exit wound, there just wasn't two. A bullet can't re-enter a body it hasn't already exited from. But the thing is, Gary already knows this. I've pointed it out to him in good faith multiple times, linking to the exact same evidence I showed in this video. And I know how much he loves using Grok to confirm what he says, so I even included Grok confirming what I said. And how did he respond to that thoughtful gesture? He resorted to ad hominem attacks by calling me retarded and brain rotted. Which is honestly hilarious because Gary has always been big on not using ad hominem attacks. Right here he says, those that resort to ad hominem attacks do so because they can't withstand disagreement. It's also a sign that you're afraid that your belief isn't based in evidence. Character assassination is a last resort tactic of cowards. It's especially true of cowards that hide behind anonymous accounts. Oh yeah, and he blocked me for it too, but the comments he got in response to blocking me over that are hilarious. But let's listen to something Gary said about MLK again real quick.
Again, all you got to do is look at Martin Luther King. Now, what I've been hearing all over the internet is anytime that you shoot a man with a 30-06, it's going to blow right through him with, there's no contingencies in there. It's like, it's going to blow right through them. It's going to take his head off, all these things. Well, what we have is Martin Luther King. He was shot in the right side of the face. The bullet went through his jawbone, went into his neck right here, and actually got lodged in the back of his back. And it was so inconsequential. Yes, it killed him, but we did not have an exit wound. And he even had an open casket. And then other people will say, well, it hit his mandible. Well, okay, so what's your point?
So he says some people mention the fact that MLK is a bad example because he was hit in the mandible. And Gary basically says, yeah, so what? Well, this goes back to what I said about Gary already knowing using MLK is a terrible comparison. I know this because he admitted it himself before his heel turn.
It's just really hard to understand. Now, somebody was telling me the other day that Martin Luther King was actually shot with a 30-06 round and there was no exit wound. That is true. The problem with that is, or the difference here, is that Martin Luther King was actually hit in the mandible. And I looked it up, like the mandible's like 10 times more dense than your vertebrae. So that might make sense. Like that's a pretty big chunk of bone up there, and it's attached to a lot of energy absorbing muscle and all the other stuff. So I could sort of buy that, but hitting a man in the neck and not seeing a exit, and that's hard to explain.
Yes it is.
He really is a night and day different person now. Whether that was a completely natural switch or there's something more to it is up to you. I just wanted to provide you with all the evidence, the point in time he pivoted, and the context surrounding that pivot so that you could form your own conclusion knowing all the facts. But ultimately, whether or not you think Gary is a Fed is up to you. Also, even though I'm about 99% sure everyone watching this has already seen what I'm about to show you, I think I need to include it anyways just in case people aren't aware of it. This is a clip of Baron Coleman reporting on a defense contract Gary was awarded by the government.
We love Gary so much because of the service he gave to our country. You know, not as a Green Beret, of course, but as a defense contractor, where he was paid off. Excuse me. I don't want to say that. Where he was given a contract that started 14 days. You can see that right here on the right-hand side. 14 days after the Charlie Kirk assassination. And you get a little bit there. And another contract just 4 days later. That one was for only $39,000. This one here was on September 29th to Impractical. And this one was for $151,000. So between 14 and 18 days, 19 days after Charlie Kirk's assassination, Gary gets a hefty dose of federal contracting, and all of a sudden he is TPUSA's best friend. You know, I found Gary shortly. I'd never heard of Gary before, but I found Gary shortly after Charlie Kirk went down because I didn't understand the ballistics of what a 30-06 could and couldn't do. So I was watching a lot of videos.
Same here. I found him the same way. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. This one took a really long time to put together, so I'd be greatly appreciative if you considered liking and subscribing or following me on X if you're watching there. I also want to shout out Chloe Ann on X. That's @agoodchloe. I had lost the motivation to finish this video due to how much work it was, so I started working on a couple different videos instead. But a few days ago, Chloe uploaded a short compilation video of Gary's earlier moments, and it lit a fire under my ass to finally get this thing finished. So thanks, Chloe. Make sure you guys go and give her a follow. I also want to apologize for how long this video is. I didn't intend on it being this long, but the runtime just kept growing and growing, and I wanted it to be thorough, so I just went with it. If you stuck around this long, you're a total badass, and I thank you. Later.